Irony is a bitch. This 70s song came on some obscure FM station halfway from Denver to Santa Fe. I didn't know anyone in Santa Fe. Almost everyone I consider friends or family lives in Denver. I have season tickets to Colorado Avalanche games. As far as I know, no one in Santa Fe plays hockey. My company has 6 offices scattered throughout the greater Denver area. I will be the only employee in our new Santa Fe office who will be working from an apartment 2 blocks from Presbyterian Medical Center. Another irony. I was raised Methodist. My name is Thomas Rixford, but my friends call me, no, not T-Rex, but Jaxie. Doesn't make sense, right? Well, I spent 3 years while friends were in college in the Northwest studying and working in the forestry industry. Yes, I did become a lumberjack, so now you understand the connection. I also still have a Harley-Davidson 2005 Softail Standard FXST that I purchased in Oregon and is in excellent condition. My ex-wife and I used to ride this bike on long trips, but those days are long gone. Basically, I grew up in the greater Denver area and, with the exception of my experience as a lumberjack, never really left my hometown. When I returned from Oregon, I went to work for my Uncle Mike, who owned his own investment company. He helped me graduate from the University of Denver with a degree in finance. This was about 12 years ago. 8 years ago, Uncle Mike retired and sold me the business. I was his most loyal employee and top earner, so it was an obvious decision for both of us. We had 4 offices at that time. I opened 2 more offices, one in Cherry Hills and one in Parker, increasing our staff from 26 to 31. Even during difficult economic times, we took good care of our customers and weathered all the storms. Our financial performance is healthy. I mentioned my ex-wife. I think it's worth giving you some context. I knew Jessica Remington in high school, but we moved in different circles. I played hockey, a working sport. My friends and I were rat hockey players, on the ice at every opportunity. We didn't do anything except hockey and homework. We only did homework because we had to have a 2.5 GPA to be on the team. She played soccer, was in the National Honor Society, and was a class officer. Our paths rarely crossed. I wasn't ugly, rather I looked rough. 6'1", and 170 pounds wet. Long brown hair in school because I hated spending money on a haircut. Girls who like hockey players and vice versa. It's not an acquired taste, so I've had a few dates. Hockey players use the word damn most sentences, for example. What a shitty move. Fucking A, good goal, Rixai. What the fuck? Get the puck out of the zone. Hey Rixai, fuck that number 17, he's such a piece of shit. I hate fucking Red Wings. Okay, you get the idea. Hockey players are also very united. We always stick together, and if we are on the same team, we are completely committed to each other. Even parents of hockey players usually hang out together. That's fucking true. We all have a little bit of the least loved child syndrome. We assume that most people outside of the hockey world don't care much about us and think we're a bunch of hooligans. Both statements are probably true, which is another reason why Miss Jessica Remington and I were never more than acquaintances in high school. There's one more thing you should know before we continue. Jessica is amazing. I don't mean cute or attractive, I mean she can be stunning. She attracts attention when she enters the room. Deep red hair, fair skin, 5'7", with an unstoppable figure. Blazing green eyes, quick wit, and quite a strong personality. Since high school, she could have any guy she wanted. She never dated the captain of the football team because he was an amazing athlete, but also a bit of a nerd. I know that doesn't happen often, right? In those days, she didn't have a regular boyfriend, she just hung out with a small group of friends. Sometimes I saw her with a popular guy, but that was it. We didn't talk until 3 years after I moved back to Denver from the Northwest. I was a little toned up from climbing and chopping trees, and there was almost no fat on my body. I was playing in a men's hockey league with a few friends when she walked in. Apparently, her friend Trisha Carmichael is into hockey. She was dating our goalie, Mike Tooney Toomer. I may have forgotten to mention that hockey players add IE or XY to any name they hear. Jaxie, look at the stands. Is that fucking Jessica Remington? Sure damn sure looks like her Beamer. I can't believe she walked up to the fucking skating rink. She's with Trisha, Tooney's girlfriend. She's probably supporting her. I was a red-blooded American boy, so I played hard to try to get her attention. I scored 2 goals and made 1 assist. After the game, we showered and were heading through the rink's heating area when I walked past her. Hey, Thomas, good game. Are you going to stop and say hello to an old school friend? Sorry, Jessica, I didn't know we were friends at school. Good to see you. I stopped, put my bag down, and extended my hand for a handshake. I know it's fucking stupid, but I'm a hockey player. We don't have the best social skills. She smiled and took my hand. Well, maybe if you walked away from the rink every now and then, you'd notice that I thought you were a nice guy. Oh my God, what's that awful smell? Sorry, hockey bags have a unique smell, very distinct. I'll throw it in the Jeep so you don't have to endure it. See you later. She looked a little annoyed, but I didn't understand why. We barely knew each other, and I was very polite when I spoke to her. Never said, fuck. The Beamer ran after me as I climbed into my very old, but lovingly restored red 2005 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. I think I have a thing for 2005 models, be it a car or a motorcycle. Hey, Jaxie, are you going to O'Connell's for a beer? Jessica is coming, and I heard her say she was wondering if you've become a snob by becoming a hot guy. You might have a chance, brother, I don't. Fucking sure why, but you better show up and don't ruin it. As my grandpa Mitchell said, I may be ugly, but I'm not stupid, so I agreed to meet at our favorite bar. I arrived first, grabbed a Coors, and plopped down at one of the 10 tables. When she arrived, she immediately walked towards me. Listen, Jaxie, is that your name? Sorry if I offended you, but your bag really stinks. But I would like to spend a little time together, without a bag, and talk. Damn. I mean, sure, Jess, I'd love to hear what's new with you. For the next 2 hours, it seemed like we were the only two in the place. I bought her a beer, and she bought me too. We talked about the past years. She attended UCLA and studied marine biology. After graduation, she spent a year as a junior at the Southern California Marine Institute and learned to surf. But she was a mountain girl at heart and returned to Denver. She was currently pursuing her teaching certificate and hoped to begin teaching high school math in the fall. I explained to her the origin of my name. She was genuinely interested in my experience as a lumberjack. She loved my Jeep, and her eyes really lit up when I mentioned Greta. She laughed when I explained hockey lingo to her, and even tasted it. Hey, Jacker, can you get me a damn beer? My name is Jaxie, not Jacker, I said, calling out to our waiter. Well, the way you tried to avoid me at the skating rink made me think Jacker was more appropriate, she said with a wicked smile. Damn me, was all I could say in response. She winked at me and said, perhaps. Before we left, we hugged politely, and she gave me her cell phone number. Call me, I'd like to ride Greta if you'll take me. I've never ridden a motorcycle, but it's on my bucket list. I waited 2 days before calling her. Believe me, I wanted to call 5 minutes after we broke up, but I didn't want to look desperate. I tried to look cool, calm, and collected, when in reality I was anything but. Hey Jess, this is Thomas. I was wondering if you wanted to join me on a trip this Saturday. We could go to Leadville. There's a music festival there this weekend. Damn you, Jaxie. I have a social life, and I can't just ditch my plans at the last minute for some hockey player, even if he's a star scorer. I was a little confused and stuttered. Sorry, Jess, I didn't mean to seem too pushy. Maybe next week. Damn you again, Jaxie. I'd love to join. What time do you want me ready? Well, it's about a 2-hour drive, so how about 9 a.m.? I'll be ready. She seemed ready to hang up. Hey, wait a minute. I don't know where you live. You're a smart guy, Jacker. Figure it out yourself. My name is Jaxie, I replied, a little annoyed at her mockery, but the line was already dead. I called Tooner, who in turn called Trisha and got Jess's address. On Saturday morning, I knocked on the door of her condominium in Golden at 9 a.m. sharp. When she opened the door, I almost fainted. She was wearing shorts, not too short but not too long, a white tank top over a red and white plaid long-sleeve shirt and black Texas stitched Hava cowboy boots. A UCLA hoodie was tied at the waist. I almost said, "Damn me," but I restrained myself. She saw my expression and smiled. "Have I passed the examination?" she purred. "Yes, ma'am, we're through." I gave her my spare helmet, a white and black AGV X3000, and we were off. The trip was great. Summers in Colorado are warm, but the mountains never get too hot. The first part of the trip was comfortable, but as we entered the foothills, we stopped to put on warmer clothes. She put on her sweatshirt, and I grabbed my black leather Roland Sands Ronin jacket. I noticed that she liked the way her driver was dressed. "If we do this again, I'll have to dress like a biker chick," she said, nudging me in the side. Leadville was amazing. We enjoyed several bands, ate delicious tacos, and talked for what seemed like hours on end. Everything went great, but this was the first time I noticed guys staring at her. Some of them were reserved, others received pokes in the ribs from their girlfriends or wives. More disturbing, in retrospect, was the way she seemed to encourage such interactions. She smiled or winked. However, I was too caught up in the moment and was simply enjoying the company of a beautiful woman who was interested in me. When I dropped her off around midnight, we talked at her door, and she gave me a friendly kiss, thanking me for a nice day. "I really enjoyed being with you today, Thomas. Greta was amazing, and I hope you call me again. Oh yeah, and thanks for not bringing your damn hockey bag." She told me earlier that since everyone called me Jack or Jaxie, she wanted to be different and call me by my real name. Even though my parents and grandparents were the only people on the planet who called me Thomas, who am I to argue? That day marked the beginning of 2 months of casual dating that led to us becoming an exclusive couple. We texted every day and talked on the phone almost every night. She received her teaching certificate and took a job at a local high school. She had hoped to teach high school, but figured it wouldn't take long if she applied herself. After 4 months, we decided to introduce our extended families. I met her parents, 2 younger sisters, Meg and Beth, 2 grandmothers, and 1 grandfather. There were cousins, but none of them lived in Denver. She met my family too. Mom, Dad, my little brother Mikey, Uncle Mike, Grandma and Grandpa Rixford, and Grandma Mitchell. I had a few kinky cousins, but I decided to wait to meet them. After several family gatherings, including Thanksgiving and Christmas, I decided it was time to evaluate where our connection was going, and so I called for a council meeting. My inner circle has always been Dad, Mikey, and Grandpa Rixford. We met on the screened porch of my house the first week of January. I had a fire burning in the fireplace, so even in sub-zero temperatures we felt comfortable. With a 15-year-old Glenlivet in hand, we sat down. "Well, guys, that's the way it is," I began. "I've been dating Jess for almost 6 months now. We've been exclusive for 4 of them, which is a first for me. I'm really starting to develop feelings for this woman, so before I go too far, I'd like to know what you 3 think. I don't care. I need to ask any of you not to hold back. I know that I will hear the naked truth from each of you, and that's what I need. I would like to start from the youngest to the eldest, if this suits everyone, grandfather, so that I want you to hear the opinions of others if you want to challenge any of them." Everyone nodded. "Okay, Mikey, get started." Mikey was 20 months younger than me and always looked up to me as a role model growing up. But Mikey was smart. Not just academically smart, although he had just completed his master's in applied mathematics, whatever that means. He tried to explain to me several times. I could understand the finance and business part, but the rest was Greek to me. However, I realized that Mikey liked to figure things out. It was never enough for him to understand something. He always wanted to test it in practice to make sure it actually worked or figure out how to do it better. It made him street smart. 2 years after I returned from my job as a logger, Mikey was a senior at Coup Boulder. I lent him my bike for a week the following summer. He told me a year later that he had only ridden it twice. Once on the first day, and once a day before returning it to me. He spent the rest of the time taking it apart piece by piece and putting it back together again. I almost fainted when I saw pictures of Greta dismantled on the floor of his garage. Then I thought about killing him, but he told me about a few improvements he had made to the fuel system, and damn me, I noticed the bike ran better when I got it back. Well, Jaxie, if this were math, I'd say there are a number of variables in fluid dynamics that need to be taken into account to determine the best results. But why bore you with the details? I'll keep it simple and use small words so you understand. 1. Jess seems like a wonderful girl. She has a good job as a teacher, she seems to genuinely care about you, and she doesn't take herself too seriously. 2. She doesn't have a long list of ex-boyfriends, so she hasn't exhibited the love it and leave it mentality. 3. You guys are showing, at least in front of us, real affection for each other. This includes, but is not limited to, respect, physical touch, good communication, and realistic conflict resolution. 4. If you continue this relationship, you will need to understand that whenever you are in public, even with friends, you will have to look around. She is stunningly beautiful, so every guy who doesn't like guys will notice, and many will probably try to make a move. 5. The big variable for me is the lack of time you spend together. You're both 27, so you have plenty of time to start a family. I'd like to see at least another 6 months before you make any long-term commitment. He finished and gave the floor to Dad. Thomas, you are a smart young man with a good head on your shoulders. 3 years of working in the forests in the Northwest took away many of the rough edges and helped you grow up quickly. Your business sense is excellent. From what I can tell, you are quite wise about your personal life. You enjoy the company of your hockey friends, but don't join them when they decide to do stupid things. I think you'll make a great husband for someone. I agree with Michael. Jessica seems like a good person. I won't repeat his assessment, but I agree with his caution. I'm not sure you know her as well as you need to if you're going to propose to her. Your mom and I dated then. We were together and separated from the age of 16 until we got married at 23. We had a few bad breakups, but it helped us figure out what we wanted and what we were made of. A little more time during the courtship phase wouldn't hurt. Dad, always curt, then looked at his father, our elder, Grandpa Rixford. Grandpa leaned back in his overstuffed leather chair, took a sip of his scotch, and looked toward the mountains, as if lost in thought. After a pause, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Beauty is skin deep, but ugliness goes to the bone." Then he took another sip and looked back at the hills. Pretty damn mysterious, right? I was about to ask him to expand on his thoughts, but Dad gave me a look that said, "Just be quiet and be patient, it will come." Grandpa began again. "Thomas, Jessica is a nice young woman with looks that could stop a truck or a train for that matter. I've been watching you too closely, and I see that you're fascinated by her. She has a good personality, but there's something else. And I can't figure out exactly what. In simple words, she seems to be the one who always needs attention. In more complex words, she is immature and self-centered. She has to be the center of everything. Happens. Silence doesn't come naturally to her, I think because no one ever shut her up when she was a child. Your dad grew up in the 70s, and I could never understand the immense devotion to rock music. Like the rest of his generation, he listened to it all the time. I hated it. Give me R&B any day of the week. Anyway, one day, I think when he was in high school, it was 79, I heard the words to a song he was playing by Bob someone, and the song was something about Hollywood. Dad interrupted her. Bob Seger, Dad, Hollywood Nights was a song. Yeah, that's right. Anyway, it's a song about a young guy who got his heart broken by some beauty queen. There was a line that said she was born with a face that allowed her to have her way. He saw that face and lost all control. Damn, I remember thinking, a song that actually makes sense in real life. My point, Thomas, is that it's Jessica. She can get anything because of her looks, but she doesn't always use it. She damn sure knows she's got it. This is potentially the ugly part of your relationship. Will she flirt with other men after marriage? simply because she wants something. Even if she is loyal to you, will these men misinterpret this and approach her? How much time will you have to spend looking over your shoulder? Will she respect you enough to stop this crap? My advice is more specific than your dad's or Mikey's. I like the slow approach, but I would add one element. Ask your uncle for 6 months leave, go back to Oregon and work in the forestry industry again. But this time, take Jess with you. Get some time alone where she doesn't know anyone and make a serious effort to get closer. I'm sure she can teach temporarily, so you're not asking her to put her career on hold. Mike won't be happy about losing his right arm for a while, but I'll talk to him about the big plan. He'll be fine. Do it. Long walks and talk about everything. About life, work, faith, children, fears, hopes and dreams, among other things. Find out if you are on the same page enough to build a life together. If she says no, that's telling you to slow down. If she says yes, even if she's a little nervous, you'll have a good foundation to build on. Anyway, your dad and Mikey are right. She's a woman who can get anything. And anyone, and it's something you'd better figure out now rather than in 5 years when you've had a kid or two and are headed for disaster. Great advice from 3 smart guys, all of whom loved me. We enjoyed the rest of the evening watching the Avs destroy Vancouver, returning to Jessica every now and then. I slept on it for a few nights and then decided to split the difference. I didn't really want to return to the Northwest, but I wanted to find a way to spend more time alone for the two of us. I also decided that I would delay the proposal for at least 4 months. There's little point in asking for advice if you don't intend to take it. I had to make this decision alone and take responsibility for the outcome. But only a fool would refuse wise advice. I believed I took the best of what was on offer. 2 weeks later, I took Jess out for dinner at a small local pub in Golden that we both liked. Burgers and beer, nothing special. Just a chance to sit and talk for a couple of hours. The owner was a buddy of mine. I played hockey with Richie, and he was happy to put us in the back, away from most of the crowd. Jess took off one of her shoes and was stroking the inside of my right leg, making it damn hard for me to concentrate. So, Thomas, are we just chatting tonight, or do we have some plans on the table? She was great, but she also had a good head on her shoulders. Jess, as I learned, was very intuitive. I think somewhere in the middle, I began. You know, I've never dated anyone seriously, but I can definitely say that I'm falling in love with you. In that case, I'm not sure how to find the best way to move forward. I know we're exclusive, but that's not the same as wanting a long-term relationship. However, I believe in my heart that is where I want to go. If you agree, I suggest some next steps. Certainly. This is just a starting point. Things I put together in my head just to keep the conversation going. Whatever we decide, we will decide together. This must have gotten her attention because she stopped teasing me with her foot. Thank God, because I was losing my ability to think straight. I already mentally began to undress her. However, she took my hand in a caring gesture, slightly romantic, but not flirtatious. Well, Thomas, I'm very flattered. You just put together about 8 sentences without saying damn. Obviously, you've thought about this a lot. I want you to know that I thought about it too. Tricia, and last Saturday, I stayed up until 3 in the morning talking about this very topic. I'm scared because I'm falling in love with you too, and I've never been so serious with anyone in my life. So why don't we start there? You're telling me what you've already come up with. I spent the next 20 minutes expressing my thoughts. We will only meet each other for at least another 4 months. More time alone on weekends, and at least 2 evenings a week when you talk about specific topics together. Asking older couples we respect for advice on what it means to have a good relationship and lots of sex, just to make sure we're physically compatible. I raised an eyebrow at the last question, but feigned innocence. Come on, baby, I know you're tough, but what if you're no good in the sack? For this, I received a blow on the arm. Do you want to become handsome? She glared at me with her bright green eyes. Then she smiled widely. I agree with all your ideas. If I remember last Tuesday correctly, you've already practiced with the last one, but there are a few things I can teach you. How about I get the check and you take me right now? I suggested with an evil grin. She went back to stroking my leg. Well, how about we start with lesson 1 right here? The theme is the art of seduction. Do you know what the hell it means, Jacker, when a young woman caresses your thigh with her foot? I'm pretty sure this means Thomas won't be getting any self-gratification tonight. This earned me an approving look. Jess added a few minor ideas while we drank the last of our beers and then pounced on Greta. The vibration of the motorcycle between our legs did its job as we walked back to my apartment. Jess hugged me tightly and occasionally let her hands slide below my waist. I almost lost control and flew off the road. When we got back to my apartment, I was putting the key in the lock of the front door when Jess whispered in my ear, "Well, I'm not sure I should be alone with the hockey boy. My mom told me you're all just perverts wanting to get into my panties. I think maybe I should go home before you take advantage of me and ruin my reputation." In one smooth motion, I pushed the door open, turned, and threw her over my shoulder, smacking her ass hard. "No chance, little girl. You've been teasing me all night, and now it's time for you to learn your lesson." We were already in the bedroom, and I threw her on the bed. After sex, Osh rolled onto me and kissed me. "Well done, Thomas Rixford. You've proven that you can take me crazy. Now, let's take a shower, and you can show me if you're capable of making love." An hour later, after countless tender kisses and passionate love, we fell asleep in each other's arms. My last thought before falling asleep was hoping this was the real deal, because it was freaking amazing. Our 4 months of intentional time invested in our relationship went pretty smoothly. I say almost because, looking back, it was a chink in the armor that I should have paid more attention to. About 3 months later, we were on a Friday night at a local pub that had live bands playing on the weekends. It was just the two of us. We had a few drinks and Jess taught me how to dance. We were having fun when I excused myself and went to the toilet. I was only gone for a couple of minutes, but when I returned, Jess was standing next to our table talking to a guy I couldn't remember, but who seemed familiar. He was too close for Jess to keep his distance. I immediately felt uncomfortable, remembering the warning from my 3 friends. However, I was sober enough to remain calm. They hadn't noticed me yet, so I went to the bar and ordered 2 more beers while watching them. I couldn't hear them, but Jess was clearly working her magic. She laughed at his comments, placing her hand on his forearm from time to time. If she missed me, she certainly didn't show it, looking around in search of me. He clearly liked it. Okay, that's enough. I walked back to the table and Jess saw me out of the corner of her eye. For a moment, a feeling of guilt flashed across her face. Then she simply smiled at me as if her sun was rising and setting on my affections and exclaimed, "Thomas, remember Wayne from high school?" Wayne had a slightly smug look on his face, but he held out his hand. "Hey, Thomas, nice to see you. It's been about 10 years. You look good, kid." I shook his hand and said hi. "Now, let me explain a few things if you're listening closely." He called me Thomas, not Jaxie or Rixai, which means he wasn't a hockey buddy. So at best, he is just an acquaintance, not a friend. Secondly, you can tell by the look on Jessica's face that she knew what she was doing was wrong. Now the question was how she would react. She missed her first chance. "Wayne, why don't you sit down and join us for a few minutes? Are you with anyone here?" "Thanks, I don't mind." "No, just with a couple of buddies. No one I can leave for a while to catch up with old friends." "I can't believe you're alone. A lot of girls should take notice." Second mistake. "You're too kind, Jess. I've dated one or the other. There were a few serious ones, but not as lucky as Thomas here." Jessica hasn't included me in the conversation yet. She didn't thank me for the beer I was now drinking. She just kept talking to Wayne. "Well, why don't you ask me to dance, and we'll see if we can get some attention for you." Third mistake. She didn't ask me if this was normal. She didn't even look at me until she stood up and took Wayne's hand, leading him to the dance floor. "I'll be back in a minute, honey. Don't flirt with anyone while I'm gone." I'll give Wayne credit. He looked very nervous. He was an inch or two taller than me, but he looked like a clean, rich boy from what I remembered. Probably never fought in his life. I had several fights in high school and several in Oregon. In truth, in the first week of working as a lumberjack, I got my ass kicked the first week of logging. I drank too much and threw it out to the hillbilly who was about 2 inches. Others liked it. He cleaned my watch while everyone was enjoying the show. We later shook hands and he took me under his wing. But from then on I tried to learn to control myself. Obviously Wayne didn't attend that school, but the look in his eyes told me he knew I did. "Do you mind if I dance with Jess?" he asked over his shoulder. Of course, Jessica told me in a tone that went beyond disrespect. There is no fourth strike in baseball, too bad. Wayne avoided being hit by at least being smart enough to try asking. I'm trying to follow an unspoken code among men. Jessica was in for a rude awakening. When they later returned to the table, I was no longer there. Greta and I had a great ride home in the moonlight, which allowed me to cool down a bit. Jess and I didn't live together. I may be old school, but I think it's disrespectful for a man to ask a woman to live with him without putting a ring on her finger. Yes, we were very sexually active, so call me a hypocrite if you want. I think that's fair. But in my opinion, it's damn easy for a guy to try to get what he wants from a woman and then just walk away if they are not an official in the eyes of God and the state. The journey home took 20 minutes. Another 20 years passed before messages began to arrive. It is clear that this was not 1 or 2 dances. "Thomas, where are you? I cannot find you." "At home." "What the hell? Why did you leave without taking me?" "You looked like you were having too much fun with Wayne." "Come back and get me now, you bastard. You're embarrassing me." "Good night, Jess. I am more than confident that you will be able to return home." My phone rang before I could turn it off, but I ignored it and turned it off. I figured I'd get a good night's sleep before the shitstorm that was about to hit in the morning. Around 7:30 a.m., I was drinking my second cup of coffee when Jess burst in with her green eyes blazing. We didn't live together, but she had her own key. "You son of a bitch, Thomas. How dare you leave me like that? Are you such a little boy that you just ran away because you were hurt? Are you such a big baby? Damn, you better explain this minute if you expect me to stay." Her nostrils flared and her face turned red with anger. Her chest heaved heavily. Damn, she was sexy. If I hadn't worked as a logger for 3 years, I might have been scared. "Would you like to sit down and have a cup of coffee, Jessica?" "Hell no, I don't want to sit down or have a cup of coffee with a teenager like that." I kept my tone calm. I think this may have angered her even more, but I wasn't about to get into a row with an angry Irish girl. "Okay, as you wish. Let me be clear, Jess. I am madly in love with you and want nothing more than for us to be together. However, I will never tolerate disrespect. What you did last night was unforgettable. We are not dating, we are not exclusive, we are committed to each other. We even mapped out ways to intentionally deepen our love in hopes that we'd be together for life. Wayne was standing in your personal space, and you weren't supporting him. In fact, when I first saw you two, you were touching his arm, showing your openness to him. Secondly, you didn't ask me. If Wayne was welcome at our table, you just ignored me and asked him to sit down. You then flirted with him, telling him that other women should notice him. Finally, without consulting me, you never asked him to dance. Even Wayne caught on and tried to ask me if everything was okay. You didn't even allow me to speak up for myself and answer his question. So tell me, Jess, what's respectful about this? How does this show my love or show Wayne that we are together? How does this demonstrate your love for me? You're drop-dead gorgeous, Jess. Guys always notice you, and I know you know what they like. In a way, you enjoy the attention. I'm not saying I was completely right to leave last night. In a way, it was childish. However, if we are going to belong, it must be mutual. What you did made me angry. I'm not going to compete for you. We've passed that stage. You don't have to compete for me. I see that I am yours. This gives you the right to expect love, respect, and honor from me, and I expect the same from me. If that's not what you're thinking, just say it. It's going to hurt like hell, but I respect your choice and move on. However, if you love me and want to continue our relationship, you must also respect me. I won't tolerate anything less. Look at it this way, Jess. How would you have taken it last night if someone we hadn't seen in 10 years was actively flirting with me when you came back from the bathroom? What if I ignored you and danced with her, without even asking your permission? There was deathly silence for a moment, and Jess looked down at me. I was almost sure she would turn around and leave, but tears began to form around her eyes. Her lower lip began to tremble. Without warning, she threw herself into my arms and began to sob. I just held her. After a moment, she caught her breath. "I'm so sorry, Thomas. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was terrible of me. I can't believe I treated you so badly. I love you and want to live with you. I'm not sure what came over me, but I was wrong. Please forgive me." She started crying again. I held her for a moment longer and then pushed her away a little so I could look her in the eyes. She was sincere. "Jess, I forgive you. I love you. But we need to make this clear. We must come first. I know guys will always hit on you. This will be a part of my life until we're 90. And even then, the guys at the nursing home will still want you. We can't be so disrespectful to each other." "I know, Thomas, that's absolutely true." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "Oh, I must look terrible. Give me a minute to wash my face, and then I'd love to have a cup of coffee and talk about this more to strengthen our love." 5 months later, we got married on a Saturday morning near Breckenridge. It was a gorgeous May morning with sunny skies and temperatures in the mid-60s. It was a nice event, even if my hockey buddies couldn't return their damn congratulations calls. Surrounded by family and friends, we made a vow to leave everyone else and live together as husband and wife. Enjoyed the day with those we loved most until about 6 p.m. when we headed out to enjoy our honeymoon. Accordingly, Greta drove us to Douai where we boarded a flight to Cabo. 9 amazing days later, we were back in early summer in Denver. Over the past months, Jess and I talked a lot, went on long walks, and I thought we touched on several issues that were important to both of us. We even saw a therapist where we struggled with some important factors in our relationships, such as families or backgrounds, expectations, and communication. All in all, I felt like I had listened carefully and taken the advice of the three men who loved me the most and went on a lifelong journey with the only woman I truly loved and who truly loved me. So how is it that just 4.5 years later, I'm driving down the highway, single again after my divorce from Jess? I thought I listened carefully and applied the good advice I received. I thought Jess and I went through a lot of emotional, psychological, and relational territory before and after we got married. I believed that we were completely honest with each other and made a commitment to honesty, love, care, and respect. What I discovered the hard way is that it doesn't mean anything unless the other person makes the same promise in their heart. It turns out that Jess had different definitions for these words that she never shared with me. There were habits in her life that she was unwilling or unable to break, and that put us as a couple at risk. In fact, Grandpa Rixford was right. Jessica was a beautiful woman on the outside, but her ugliness got to the bone. A year earlier, Jess had learned that her application to the local high school had been accepted. She will teach Algebra Roman II and trigonometry to 10th graders. There were 2 older faculty members in the math department who were a couple of years away from retirement. If things go well, Jess will be teaching app math in the not-too-distant future. According to the head of her department, Dr. Charles Wellborn, or as he came to be known, Chuck the Hell. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Jess was more than pumped up in the first 2 months of the school year. Every evening she told me about her training and what this or that child had learned. It was clear that she liked it when kids liked math. She loved teaching middle school, and a big part of her passion was seeing the kids enjoy it. From time to time, she would talk about Dr. Wellborn and what a wonderful mentor he had been to her and the other new faculty members in the department. I didn't think much about it other than he was a good guy who wanted everyone to do their best. I should have turned on the radar, but he was 15 years older than her, married with 3 children, all teenagers. I first met him in early October. After hearing about his amazing personality and leadership qualities, I was a little disappointed. He was not a weakling. He was probably about 6'1" in tall. He wasn't overweight and looked fit and toned for a guy in his 40s. He was not bald, and his head was not covered with gray hair. But nothing about him stood out. Nothing special or surprising. The way Jess was talking, I guess I was expecting Wayne Gretzky teaching math. But to me, he looked more like Barry Melrose. To me, it was Dr. Dillis Wellborn. At first glance, he was a good guy. To each his own, was my thought. Jess loved his support and leadership, so who am I to judge? I listened politely as she talked about how inspiring he was. It was at this point that I noticed that about 90% of our conversations were about her work and about 75% about Wellborn. When I talked about my work, hockey, or family, she would smile and listen for a minute or two, and then return to herself and her world. Since I've never been married before, I just assumed that's how most conversations about marriage go. I never minded hearing about her day or her work, even about her boss, but sometimes I really wanted her to ask me about my work, family, etc. Unfortunately, she rarely did this, and what is equally sad, I never shouted to her about it until it was too late. It was the week after Thanksgiving, and I was on the phone with my mom. No matter how wonderful the men in my family are, my mother can go toe-to-toe with any other man. We talked about the upcoming Christmas holidays and tried to synchronize our holiday calendars. Before we hung up, Mom changed gears. "Thomas, how are you and Jess?" "Okay, Mom, okay." "Is it true? Are you sure, Thomas?" Clearly, this was not a question. "Yes, I think so, Mom. Why do you ask?" "Well," Mom paused. "Mom, you always have permission to speak to me freely. I know you're not going to gossip about Jess or talk bad about her. If you have anxiety, I know it is because of love, so please tell me what you are thinking." "Nothing special, Thomas. She just always talks about herself and her work. I've never heard her brag about you unless someone else did it first. I've never heard her ask you a serious question about what you're doing, or it seems strange to me, son. Enthusiasm in a relationship is a two-way street. You always support her and pay attention when she shares. I guess I'm just wondering why she doesn't reciprocate." "She came. I didn't talk to her about it because I'm her mother-in-law, not her mom. I don't want her to think that I'm taking sides between you two. We are one, so I am for both of you. If I bring this up with her, I'm afraid it will be perceived as because she's not good enough for my boy, and I don't want her to think that way." We talked some more, and I thanked her for her concern. I did not agree with her comments out loud. However, deep down, I felt that she pointed to the anxiety that was growing in my heart. I thanked her for her thoughts and told her that I would seriously consider her words. I didn't tell Jess about it right away, but I decided to start keeping a journal of our conversations. No details, and I wasn't trying to set a trap for Jess to make my point. I work with numbers and specifics for a living, so it was easy to start just tracking our conversations. This is how I was able to get the interest I mentioned earlier. We talked almost exclusively about Jess and her world. I got a nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach as I remembered Cigar's song. She was born with a face that let her get her way. Jess was amazing in many ways, but in this area she was immature and selfish. However, she is used to always getting her way. I decided that I would plan a trip for the weekend so we could talk and enjoy each other's company. We did this off and on for the first 3 years of marriage, so it didn't come as a surprise to Jess. This weekend we brought up issues that we found interesting or troubling about our relationship. I knew Jess wouldn't feel overwhelmed if I acted this way. I was excited when I booked us a cabin near Aspen, knowing that we would be able to relax, enjoy each other, and talk freely about ourselves. Before I paid the deposit, I checked our general schedule and saw no school conflicts for the following weekend. I'd missed the hockey game and have to put up with a few "what the hell" Jaxie comments, but I was confident I'd survive, especially if I did my penance and bought the first round after the next game. I was really excited to share my plan with Jess when she got home. Immediately after dinner, I shared my plan with her. I thought she would be excited and want to go. Wrong. She was silent for a few seconds longer than I expected, and then she spoke. "Thomas, I would like you to check with me first," she began. "Charles is planning a mandatory pulpit meeting for next Saturday morning. He wants to introduce some new ideas for next semester's curriculum." When she spoke, there was an expression of annoyance on her face, not disappointment that we could not spend the weekend together. "Jess, to be honest, I checked with you. I looked closely at our shared calendar, and it wasn't listed. How long ago was this planned? I didn't miss the fact that Dr. Wellborn became Charles, but I decided to leave it out for now. About a week ago, I think," Jess replied, sounding less confident than she should have. "I'm sure I added it, but I may have forgotten." This was the first time that a shared calendar was her idea. I was furious. "Damn it, Jess, you're already working too hard. Now Wellborn thinks he controls your weekends too. This is not fair, Thomas. Charles wants what's best for our math students and teachers. He just wants to help everyone. I don't think one Saturday is that big of a deal. We will probably find another day off to go away together." "That's not the point, Jess," I replied, growing increasingly irritated. "We have been using this calendar for several months now, and it is our main tool. It was your idea. I remember 2 months ago I forgot to include a dinner with a couple of clients on a Wednesday night. As far as I remember, you made a scandal with me, demanding to change the meeting. I am sure that what is true for me is also true for you." "Damn it, Thomas, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. We can just reschedule." "Sorry, Jess, you're right," I said, sarcastically enough for her to get the hint. "Forgive me for holding you within the same framework as you hold me. Forgive me for wanting to plan a nice weekend with my wife. Forgive me for disrupting Charles' almighty schedule." She started to respond in anger, but spoke into the back of my head as I left the room and headed for the door. I got on Greta and rode for about an hour to calm down. An hour turned into 3 as I went to the local pub and had a couple of beers. When I returned home, the atmosphere was cold. We only saw each other briefly and didn't speak. I ended up working in my home office for a couple more hours and fell asleep on the couch. I've always been an early riser since I worked in the Northwest. Lumberjacks can party late into the night, but work begins before the sun rises, and if you want to get paid, you can't be late. I left the house at 5:30. Jess usually gets up around 6:15, so we didn't cross paths. At the office, I canceled the reservation, which cost me a $100 deposit. Not such a big amount, but it annoyed me. Later in the day, I noticed that her faculty meeting was on the calendar, as was the math teacher conference in Colorado Springs on the second weekend of January, as well as 2 bachelorette parties between then and then. Later that afternoon, I sent Jess an infantile message. Immediately after work, I go to the skating rink. Game at 7, then a couple of beers. I'll be home around 11. If in doubt, check the general calendar. It's been there for 2 months. There was no answer. Over the next week, we continued our silent struggle, speaking only when necessary. I waited for her to apologize for not updating the calendar and for what I perceived as her lack of concern for her mistake. I guess she was waiting for me to accept that the universe revolved around her and come crawling. Both of us are stubborn, so we were both frustrated by the other's lack of acceptance. The following Saturday, Jess was dressed and ready to go when she surprised me at breakfast with a serious kiss. "Thomas, I hope that later today we can talk like adults and make peace. I understand your disappointment about this weekend, but I'm confident we can make it right." With these words, she winked at me and walked out the door. No apologies, no acknowledgement of her mistake, just did what she wanted and expected me to comply. Seeger's cry rang in my ears. A face that will let her have her way. I was angry for about half an hour and then decided that I would not waste the day. The door on the covered porch has been squeaking for the past 2 weeks, so I decided to take it off its hinges, oil it, and put it back. I also thought of a couple of other small projects I could do. After removing the door, I realized we were out of lube, so I got in the Jeep and drove to the hardware store. Mick's Hardware has been around for a long time. It was opened by the original Mick just after the First World War and has remained in the family for the last 90 years. The store was now run by Mick Roman IV along with his two sons, Mick V and Eddie. I played hockey with Eddie, and Mick V only worked in the store on weekends because he taught math at the same school as Jess. Imagine my surprise when I walked in and V was helping a woman pick out a good snowblower. He smiled and waved at me as I entered. The surprised look on my face must have surprised him, because he caught up with me a couple of minutes later in aisle 9, where I was getting oil. "Hey Jaxie, what's up, buddy? Heard you scored a goal and 2 assists on Thursday. Eddie said you played pretty well for an old man." "Hey, yeah, it was a good evening. Sorry if I gave you a weird look when I walked in, but I thought Wellborn was holding a meeting for math teachers this morning. Did you decide that the store couldn't do without you, and you quit?" Now it was his turn to look puzzled. "I'm sorry, Jaxie, but I think you're wrong. I'm still teaching, but Dr. Arrogant Wellborn hasn't scheduled a meeting for today. He's an arrogant jerk, but even he's not stupid enough to ruin our weekend. Jess told you we had a meeting." I somehow maintained my composure. Probably misunderstood what Jess said when she ran out the door. Then I thought of something else. "Hey, do mathematicians ever go to academic conferences?" "Yes, of course," he replied. I felt relieved for 1 second, but then he continued. "Our next one is in Estes Park at the end of March. I plan to attend half of the seminar and then go skiing." Trying to breathe and act more or less normal, I deflected. "That sounds like you, although I am surprised that you plan to attend half the meetings." "Yes, I know. I'm probably getting old. We'll talk later, Jaxie. I need to make sure Eddie isn't trying to take credit for my snowblower sales." And with that, he left, taking with him any trust I had in Jess. I paid for the oil and got into the Jeep. Damn, why is she lying to me? Twice? I drove past the school trying to find her car. I checked all 4 parking lots, not just the one near the math classrooms. No cars, no lights on, no one. My mind was racing along with my heart, and I needed to calm down and think. I assumed the worst, and assumptions are known to lead to bad places. I needed to know the facts about my wife. Where is she? What is she doing? And is she with that damn Charles? I couldn't just go home and wait. I went to the cafe, took a cup of coffee, and sat down in the far corner of the bistro. An hour later, notepad in hand, I had a plan. My insurance agent was a guy from my hockey team. Pat Cookie Cook was surprised that I was calling on a Saturday morning. "Jexie, what did you do? Break your leg trying to practice your pathetic skating skills?" "It better be this way, Cookie. I need some of your time. Can I meet you in your office?" He knew from the tone of my voice that it wasn't a broken bone, but something serious. 15 minutes later, we were sitting in his conference room. "When you suspect insurance fraud, do you have a trusted detective investigate?" "Of course, Jaxie, but why do you need a detective?" "Cookie, this is completely confidential, right?" He looked at me as if I had committed the greatest insult in the history of the world. "Sorry, buddy, but my head is spinning. I think Jess might be cheating on me, and I need to find out without anyone finding out. Do you have someone who could help me?" "Damn it, Jaxie. I hope it's not what you're thinking. No, I don't have a boyfriend, but I have a girlfriend, and she is the best. Almost invisible, tough as nails, and always finding the truth. I can put you in touch with her right now if needed. It's not cheap, but it's the best." "Thanks, Cookie. Yes, I hope I'm wasting my money on my fantasies. Please call her." Her name was Ella Compton. Since private investigators work unusual hours, she agreed to meet with me later in the day. I returned home, finished the porch door, took a shower, grabbed a bite to eat, and met her at 1 p.m. I texted Jess that I was running errands and would be home around 3. Ella was a relatively short woman, about 5'5", but if you looked closely, it was clear that she was not to be trifled with. She smiled politely as we spoke, but there was steel in her voice, accompanied by a business-like approach to her work. I explained everything to her in as much detail as possible. When we finished, she said, "It will take a few weeks if you want a full accounting. My investigation will extend beyond the New Year's holiday because you think she's lying about the conference. I'm not cheap, Mr. Bidges Rixford, but I promise you'll know the truth when I'm done. I just need $1 to $500 down on Venmo, and I'll get started. I will issue the rest of the invoice when the work is completed." I sent the advance as she requested and asked a couple more questions. We stood up, shook hands, and parted. I felt like I was at rock bottom, but I knew I had to keep up appearances. I had to be dishonest with everyone I loved and respected, but secrecy was the only way to find out the truth. Jess was home when I arrived, and she was working in the kitchen, humming to herself when I entered. In a good mood after having sex with Chuck, I thought as I kissed her on the cheek and told her I needed to take a shower. Luckily, I had tickets to the Avalanche vs. Predators game that night, and Jess rarely came with me. I took Mikey, and she was more than happy with it. Before I left, I lied for the first time. "Jess, I'm sorry I reacted so strongly this weekend. I wanted us to spend it together, but I shouldn't have talked to you like that. Please forgive me." "Of course, Thomas. I understand your disappointment. I'm also sorry that we couldn't leave, but we'll be leaving soon, just the two of us." Bitch to the end, huh? I thought. The next 6 weeks were hell. I put on a happy face at the office, at home, and with my family. Christmas was painful as we exchanged gifts and went to my parents' house for lunch, then to her family's for dinner. New Year's was even worse, if that's even possible. We went to dinner and danced. Jess kissed me passionately at midnight, and we had sex later in our hotel. The physical part was the hardest. We had sex at least once a week. I still loved her body, but now I was just using it for my limited pleasure. No real warmth or pillow talk. No love, only sex. If she noticed it, she didn't show it. New Year's Day fell on a Friday, so we still celebrated with dinner at Mom and Dad's on Sunday. Grandma and Grandpa Rixford were with us. We were hugging and kissing goodbye around 6 p.m. when my grandfather quietly called me aside. "I'm sorry, Thomas. I'm so sorry," he whispered so that no one else could hear. "Sorry about what, Grandpa?" I answered, honestly not understanding his meaning. "Sorry, I was right." "What?" He smiled sadly. "I was right. The ugliness goes all the way to the bone," he said, nodding toward Jess. "Just know that we are all with you, no matter what happens." I wanted to collapse into his arms and cry. He saw tears in my eyes. "No tears, Thomas. You can handle it. There will be time for tears later. For now, just do what you need to do. We Rixfords always support each other." At that moment, he gave me strength, and I knew that I could handle it. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in Ella's office, across the desk from her. She called me earlier in the day, saying the report was ready. I asked to meet at her work, not mine. If the news was what I expected, I didn't want to fall apart in front of my employees. She started. "I'm sorry to tell you, Thomas, that you spent a lot of money to find out that your wife is cheating and lying. I assume you've prepared for the worst, but if you need a few minutes, I'll give you time to get ready." "No, please continue." She was the first to introduce a new nickname that would stick. "Well, Chuck is sleeping with your wife. Usually at the Hampton Inn in Inglewood. I think they choose this location because you don't have offices there. They are very careful. They behave exclusively professionally at work and among colleagues. Very discreet. Drive separately to parking lots or truck stops where they will never run into family or friends. Far enough away to be invisible, but not so far away that you can get home quickly if you need to." As you suspected, there was no conference in Colorado Springs. They spent that weekend in Gunnison in a remote cabin outside of town. Their meetings occur approximately once every 8 or 9 days. As far as I can tell, they've met at least 6 times, not counting the weekend, since you hired me. I have audio and video of their last 2 love affairs in Hampton, thanks to a couple $100 and a friendly front desk clerk. Don't worry, I'll add it to your bill. I also have photos of their meetings, driving to the hotel, and pictures of the entrance and exit. I also have some conversations from their burner phones thanks to listening devices in their cars. The evidence is undeniable. She passed me a 2-inch thick folder across the table. Everything is here, although I advise you not to look at the photos or listen to the recordings too soon. They're very graphic. For some reason, I was able to remain calm throughout our conversation. I asked her several follow-up questions, and she answered each one thoroughly. When we finished, I asked her to send the final invoice to my private business address. I collected the folder and got up to leave. Mr. Rixford, if I may, this is the best and worst part of my job. I am selective in choosing my clients. I try to avoid liars and deceivers. I never help anyone cheat on their spouse, co-workers, or family members. I've tested you and I know you're a good guy, even a great one. You don't deserve this. I hate to break this news to you. This is the best part of my job, though, because now you know the truth. You can deal with this honestly as you see fit. You are no longer in the dark. You may have been a cheated husband, but not anymore. Now you can regain control of your life and go on the right path. Thank you, was all I could say. The last thing, she added, I dug Chuck a little more. This isn't his first rodeo. If you want help taking down this bastard, I will offer my help for free. It's a shame this isn't the 1880s, or we could hang it before sunset. When I went out, I noticed that it was starting to snow. Gray twilight seemed to envelop my world. I sat in my Jeep for a few minutes, trying to figure out what to do next. 5 minutes later, I called Jess. She answered the third ring. My second lie. Hi, honey, I had to go to Boulder this afternoon to see a client. They were in a real mess and needed my help urgently. It's snowing heavily here now, and I still have a couple of hours of work to do, so I'll be back tomorrow. Oh, sorry, dear. I was going to surprise you and go to your hockey game today. Please be careful and get home safely tomorrow. I love you. Thanks, bye, was all I could say. I was planning on visiting my parents, but on a whim I stopped at the Hampton Inn in Inglewood. I parked 2 lots away in a spot where I could watch the entrance. My Jeep was hidden from view by several bushes bordering the parking lot. I decided to wait an hour. While he was waiting, Cookie called and told him the bad news. Damn, Jaxie, I'm so sorry, buddy. Thank you, Cookie. I need you to cover for me in front of the guys today. Make sure they know the next keg is on me. I'll call you tomorrow, but for now, please score a few goals today. Just talking, as usual, helped. Of course, brother. I didn't have to worry about whether my soon-to-be ex-wife would show up with her lover. About 35 minutes later, Chuck appeared and headed into the lobby. I guess they felt safe enough knowing I was out of town to drive separately, because 5 minutes later Jess, the evil bitch, arrived and parked at the far end. She walked to the side door where her boss greeted her, opening the door and giving her a quick kiss. I threw everything up on the bushes. Returning to the car, I went to my parents. On the way, I called my father and told him. He was quiet, which with my father meant fury. I asked him to tell my mother because I didn't have the strength to repeat the story at that moment. After telling him that I would be there in 20 minutes, I hung up and cried the whole way. When I arrived, I saw cars that belonged to Mikey, Uncle Mike, and Grandpa. Mom opened the door before I even reached the steps. I collapsed into her arms, sobbing like a little child. When I got ready, the 6 of us sat down in the living room. Mom wanted to feed me, and my father poured me a strong drink. I refused both, not trusting my stomach. For the next 30 minutes, I told them the story as I knew it. I hadn't read the file yet, but I knew enough from talking to Ella to connect the dots for them. Everyone sat in silence and let me throw out everything that had accumulated. I cried throughout the entire story, and my mother rubbed my back the whole time, as she did when I was little. By the time I finished, everyone had tears in their eyes. Grandfather spoke first, like a patriarch. Well, Thomas, I know we are all deeply saddened by your pain. I know all of us would love to spend a few minutes alone with Jess and her boss. We are all angry, but we must be wise. Letting out feelings feels right, but it would be the wrong approach. Why don't we talk a little longer, and then I suggest we call it off for the evening, take a strong sleeping pill, and continue this in the morning. Nothing good will come of long discussions today. But as I told you a few weeks ago, we are all with you, no matter what. Everyone looked at grandfather with wide eyes. The realization that he knew what was going on, even if others had missed it, began to set in. Nobody was mad that he didn't talk about it sooner. Everyone understood that he had his own methods, and every member of our family trusted him as the foundation stone of our family. "You're right, Dad," my father finally answered. He then asked, "How can we cope with Thomas not being there tomorrow? Tess will be waiting for a call from him or expecting him to be home by early afternoon." Uncle Mike intervened. "I can solve this issue, brother." Thomas told Jess that he was swamped with business in Boulder. "This storm has given him a short respite, but I can extend it. I'll call Jess in the morning and explain that the situation is serious and only Thomas can handle it. He'll have to talk to her at some point tomorrow, but I can assure her it will take another day or two. Since she's in school, she won't be tempted to go to Boulder to play the loving wife." We agreed to this plan, adding a few suggestions from Mom and Dad. When we finished, my brother came up to me and hugged me as if it was our last time together. More tears. Uncle Mike hugged me too. Grandfather came up and took my face in his hands. "You can do it, Thomas. I promise." After everyone left, I went to the guest room, took a couple of pills from the medicine cabinet, and in less than 20 minutes the medicine, along with my emotional exhaustion, did their job. I passed out. The next morning I woke up surprisingly calm and determined. Sadness remained my primary emotion, but Jess had made her choices, including ignoring her marital vows and completely disrespecting me, so now it was time for me to make my choice. My family loved me, and that was the foundation that would get me through this. My long-term plan began to take shape. The team reconvened at 8:30 a.m. at the kitchen table. By noon, we had the basic outlines of the plan. My next stop was the lawyer Uncle Mike recommended. I wanted someone who successfully advocated for people like me, husbands whose wives cheated. I arrived at the law firm at exactly 1:30. After the introductions, I sat down with the second of the three scourges. Meredith Beach Cochran was a pleasant-looking woman whom I assumed was in the late 40s. She had steely blue eyes and a firm handshake. We exchanged pleasantries as much as possible in this situation. I learned that she practices exclusively family law and never defends or represents fraudsters. It was clear that she was knowledgeable about the law, but also had a realistic view of the world of divorce in Colorado. "What do you want when the dust settles, Mr. Rixford?" "I'm not quite sure yet, consultant," I replied. "I know I don't want her to leave our marriage with an extra penny, but I guess that's not realistic. However, our prenuptial agreement clearly protects my family business in case of divorce due to infidelity. I want to keep my good name, which means I don't want us to hide the fact that her betrayal is the reason for my lawsuit. I want his name to be known to the public as the one she cheated with. I'd like to see him fired over this, but I'm prepared to settle for public humiliation for him. Besides, I want to cut all ties and move on with my life." Most of what you say makes sense, and I'm glad to see that you don't have high expectations about what we can expect from the trial. I have to ask you, as your lawyer, you have no intention of causing physical harm to either of them, right? "No, ma'am, but once his name gets out, I can't vouch for what some of the more enthusiastic guys on my hockey team might do." "Well, damn it, you're right about that," she replied with a devilish grin and a raised eyebrow. My mouth opened in surprise. I just looked at her. "Two brothers played at the University of Denver in the early 2000s, Jaxie, so I know the lingo," she winked. "Well then, damn it, Mrs. Beach Cochran, I think I've found the right lawyer." "Yes, Mr. Rixford, and you can call me Beecher if you want." "Great, I'm Jax." Before I left, we agreed on the following. 1. I will leave her a folder with evidence so that she can study it carefully. 2. She will file for divorce within 24 hours and Jess will receive the papers after school on Friday in the school parking lot. She believed that the effect of surprise would work in our favor. Maybe Jess will do something stupid when we meet that will help us achieve our end goal. 3. I will be home on Friday evening for the first conversation and will insist that Jess leave since the house is in my name. 4. We will continue to work with private investigator Ella for a couple more weeks to monitor Jess' behavior before and after she is served with the divorce papers. This was a bit of a pain as the bill was already around $5K. There were other points she emphasized: staying calm, letting my family help me cope with the pain, and maintaining a normal routine even though I wanted to retreat into my shell. We ended our first conversation by exchanging cell phone numbers, and she made it clear that I could call her at any time with questions. I texted Jess as I left her office. "I'm done with this mess. I'm going home. I'll be there around 6. She replied, "I can't wait to meet you." She added some red hearts. I immediately deleted the message. I went back to my parents for a couple of hours to tell them what was happening. Mikey was there with Mom and Dad when I arrived. I called my grandfather and told him too. "You sound better already, Thomas. I'm proud of the way you carry yourself." At 5:30, it was time to go home. When I arrived, I had already made a plan for the evening. Jess was upstairs, but when she heard the door, she ran downstairs. I met her in the kitchen, and we exchanged a pleasant kiss and an intimate hug. Nothing excessive, but enough that she wouldn't suspect anything was wrong. I showered, changed, and we made a simple dinner of burgers and a big salad together. I realized that I had not eaten for over 24 hours and suddenly felt hungry. As dinner came to an end, Jess began to flirt. She was wearing a baggy shirt, no bra, and leggings that didn't cover much. The thought of sex with Jess was disgusting to me, but she was still my wife, and I was still physically attracted to her. "You may have had to be Jacker last night, but I hope Jaxie takes his wife upstairs and fucks her senseless today." "Sorry, honey, but my head is still pounding from the stress of the last 2 days and driving through the snow." She looked a little surprised. On one hand, you could count the number of times I've turned down sex over the years, and I'd have 5 fingers left. "I understand, I'm sorry," she answered, clearly disappointed. "How about you take a bath, and I'll give you a nice back massage," I suggested. She did take a long, hot bath, and I gave her a nice back massage, resisting the temptation to strangle her. 20 minutes later, I heard her soft breathing in her sleep. I got out of bed, covered it up, and lay as far as I could on the other side of the bed, falling into a restless sleep. I had a hockey game the next night, and she knew better than to suggest that I miss it since I missed the game on Monday. Thursday was more difficult, but my parents invited us over for dinner, which made things a little easier, although on the way home it was clear that she intended to be well off for the rest of the night. I saw this coming and subtly texted Uncle Mike right before we left. 2 minutes after we started driving home, Uncle Mike called, just like on script. "Thomas, I'm sorry to bother you. It looks like you're on the road. Are you with Jess?" "Yes, Uncle Mike. We just left from dinner at Remington's." "Okay, hi Jess honey." "Hi, Uncle Mike. We're a little busy. Maybe Thomas will call you back in the morning." She winked at me, giggling quietly. "Sorry, honey, but this can't wait. Thomas, the fact is that Jackson's investment file was not completed today. I know you've been out of the office all day with the Mitchells, but Tina went home with the flu, and you know we need to have this ready by 7:30 this morning." "Damn, Uncle Mike, seriously?" I said, pretending to be disappointed. Giving Jess an academically fake sigh of disappointment, I continued. "Okay, I'll drop Jess off and be at your office in 30 minutes. "Thank you, Thomas. Once again, Jess, I'm so sorry." "You owe Jess and me for steak for the next 2 weeks, Uncle Mike. At the Capitol Grill, not the Texas Roadhouse." "Deal, baby." "Damn it, Thomas. This is really starting to get annoying," Jess said indignantly. "What should a girl do to get her husband into bed?" I will refrain from voicing the answer that came to my mind at that moment. "I know, honey, but I'm sure that in the next few days you'll be lucky enough to have sex to your heart's content." If she noticed that I said you and not us, she didn't show it. She just snorted and continued to sulk for the last 10 minutes of the ride, slamming the door as she got out from the car. I rolled down the window and called out in a falsely hopeful voice, "I don't have to stay more than 3 hours, honey. Maybe you can wait for me." She didn't turn around or stop. She just gave me the middle finger over her shoulder and walked into the house. Yes, that's right, bitch, fuck you. Friday was the most unproductive day of my career. I arrived early, leaving Jess a note saying I was going to work before dawn to ensure we had a relaxing evening. After sorting through a few backlogs, I made a few calls to clients. When I raised my head, I was sure that it was already about noon. It was 9:30 a.m. I told my assistant Donna that I was going to the gym where I had been training intensely. After meeting my dad and Uncle Mike for lunch, I headed back to the office for 2 more unproductive hours and then headed home. I arrived an hour before Jess was expected to arrive. When I arrived home, Jess was finishing her last lesson at school. Chuck peeked into her classroom, grinning lustfully. "Hey, honey, how about we stop somewhere on the way home today?" Chuck was a nice guy and could charm like no other. However, Jess was a woman who always managed to get her way from men, including me. She was starting to get tired of her lover. He was excellent in bed, but he had a job with clear restrictions. He would never become rich, and he was 15 years older than her. Besides, he had no intention of leaving his wife and 3 children. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that Chuck was a dead-end street. She decided to stop it, but wanted to do it politely since he would still be her boss. "Sorry, Charles, but Thomas and I have been fighting all week, so I need to go home to him. How about meeting on Sunday evening? Thomas has a hockey game at 5, so I can meet you from 4 to 6. After this, I'll tell him we're done," she thought. Chuck didn't like it, but he understood. Maybe it's not too late to convince your mother-in-law to take the kids for the evening. His wife wasn't as beautiful as Jess, but she was still pretty, and he always enjoyed sex with her. "Okay, I'll pick you up from the bus stop at 4. He whistled as he left her class. Jess was relieved that she was going to break up with Chuck. He treated her like a princess, but he was beginning to think that he had a right to her body. She has always dominated the men in her life, even Thomas to some extent. No one, especially Charles, will control her. After sitting down for half an hour and grading her math tests, Jess realized that she adored her husband. Some of the important connections between love, loyalty, devotion, and honesty that are essential to a healthy marriage were not working in her brain. It didn't occur to her that she should feel guilt and shame. Jess should have realized how selfish and narcissistic she was deep down, but it eluded her. It never occurred to her that her true ugliness was down to the bone. All this is about to change. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Jessica Rixford?" the woman asked as she approached Jess in the parking lot, holding a manila envelope. Beecher always used female bailiffs to serve wives. Low-key women tended to reassure other women. "Yes, it's me, sorry, I don't know you. Who are you?" "I have an important document for you, so excuse me for asking, but can I see your ID?" "Of course," Jess said, confused and intrigued. A polite, friendly trick always worked. Jess wore a teacher's badge around her neck. She took it and showed it. "Is that enough?" "Great, thanks. Mrs. Jessica Rixford, you have received the documents." The woman handed Jess a folder, which she accepted. The bailiff turned around and left, wondering why some women were so stupid. "Stupid people always accept documents without even thinking," she chuckled as she got into the car and drove away. "Wait, what? I don't understand who you are. What is this?" Jess didn't get a response, only the sight of a woman running away. Slowly, like the dawn over a dark early morning, reality began to take over Jess's world. "No, it can't be," she whispered, tearing open the envelope. The words at the top of the first page screamed at her. "A suit for divorce." "No, no, no, this can't be right," her brain responded. "Thomas would never do this to me. He adores me. He loves me. He can't know about Charles. We were absolutely secret. There was no way he would find out. If he had known, he would have confronted me about it. Oh God, I have to go home and fix everything. She was rushing for the keys, dropped the papers, started crying, picked up the documents, and tried to open the door at the same time. A moment later, she managed to collect everything, open the door, and start the engine. She was crying and shaking with fear. She tried to slow her breathing, but having little to no experience with real shock or stress, she was confused. It took her a few minutes to calm down and start driving home. Along the way, she went from hysterical to furious to crying, and then back to furious. She was ready to tell him everything when she returned home. No one, especially Thomas Rixford, treats her so shamefully. How dare he put on such a show at her work? Luckily, it was after most people had left, but a few teachers were still on campus, and it's likely several of them witnessed the conflict. By Monday, rumors will be spreading throughout the school. Again, it did not occur to her that she herself was the cause of her pain. Her infidelity to the man who loved her unconditionally was the root of this disaster. However, by the time she pulled into the driveway, she had collected her thoughts and was determined to remain calm. She was sure that she could explain her infatuation with Charles if Thomas knew about it. She claimed it was sexual harassment and explained that he forced her to sleep with him for promotion. Yes, an action plan was being formed. She would never choose to sleep with another man. Thomas was her one and only, but she was too scared to tell him the truth. She was too embarrassed to tell him what had happened and was afraid that his anger would get out of control and he would attack Charles, ending up in serious trouble. She would then have sex with him until he passed out and they could put the incident behind them. By the time she walked through the door, she truly felt confident in her plan. I was sitting at the kitchen table when she arrived. There was another file on the table, but Jess ignored it. She went on the offensive. Thomas, my love, there must have been a terrible misunderstanding. Why do you want to divorce me? We love each other. You are my only relative soul. What the hell made you do something so stupid? I remained calm. Jess, please sit down. She did. Jess, I've learned some disturbing things about your behavior as my wife. I'm going to give you a chance to come clean and tell me the truth. I promise I will sit and listen without interrupting. If you give me an honest reason why my actions are wrong, I will reconsider. Jess started to interrupt. I raised my hand. But Jess, let me be clear before you start. I'm going to record our conversation on my phone so that there is no confusion in our discussion later. You only have one chance to be completely honest with me. Please don't hide behind lies and misrepresent what you did. If you do this, I can promise you that we are done, and I will proceed with the divorce immediately. Still ignoring the folder on the table, Jess began. I don't mind recording this, Thomas. I'll tell you the truth. Charles Wellborn forced me to have sex with him. He used his position of power to force himself on me. Time and time again, I fought off his advances, but he made it clear to me that the best way forward was in his bed. At first, I tried to just kiss him and let him touch me a little. I hated every second of it, but I endured it because I was depressed and didn't know what to do. But this was not enough for him, and he always demanded more. As Jess continued, she began to cry. I didn't want to tell you because I thought I could handle him, and I was afraid you would attack him and end up in jail or worse, jail. When it became clear that sex was the only way to satisfy him, I did just that. In fact, he was in my class this afternoon after school, trying to get me to sleep with him before I came over to your house, but I turned him down. Oh, Thomas, I'm so glad you know now. You can help me put an end to his bullying. I can't prove it, but I've heard rumors, and I think he did this to other teachers before me. At that moment, Jess laid her head on the table and began to sob. Jess, I'm really sad, but I have to say it was an amazing performance. Thomas, what are you talking about? How can you say such terrible things after I gave you my soul? Jess, you always knew how to get your way with men, including me. You are so beautiful on the outside, and sometimes we are so gullible that we believe that there is beauty on the inside. Let me tell you what I know. With that, I opened the file and began to explain all this to Jess. You've been sleeping with asshole Chuck for at least 2 months. Maybe longer, but I'm sure it's that long. You two are going to the Hampton Inn in Inglewood." At this point, I started moving the pictures around the table so Jess could look at them. She began to turn pale. At least 6 meetings in the last 2 months. Also, there was no Saturday morning math teacher meeting in early December, and there was no teacher conference in Colorado Springs a few weeks ago. In addition, I have several records of the time we spent together. Here's just one short snippet. "So, my dear, loving, faithful wife, you certainly do not look like a woman who has been taken against her will or who is trying to reluctantly appease an abusive boss. Your voice and these photographs tell the true story. You slept with Chuck at least 8 times, one of them for an entire weekend in Gunnison, and that's just one. A cheating bitch wife who thought she could set her husband up and get away with it." Jess sat there, mouth agape, for the first time in her life, speechless and coming to the conclusion that she couldn't constantly flirt, bat her eyelashes, and solve her problems. I continued, "You broke my heart, Jess. I have no idea how many tears I have shed over the past couple of months realizing your betrayal. My work and family relationships suffered. My self-esteem has hit rock bottom. And I repeatedly asked myself why. Why would you ruin my love and our marriage because of some outside sex with a school teacher? Some people say that the opposite of love is hate, but I think the opposite of love is indifference, and that is how I will treat you. I won't care about you anymore." Thomas I. "No, Jess, not anymore. I packed a bag for you. If you want to go upstairs and get a few more things, that's fine with me, but you won't be in this house tonight. My lawyer's contact information is in the packet you have, so if you want to come and remove more of your stuff, just let her know. I'll make sure I'm not here. If you want, I'll throw it away or burn it." "But Thomas, please, I'm sorry. I was too scared to tell you the truth. I screwed up royally, but we can get through this. I want to be with you and only you." "Scared, Jess? Is it true? When have I ever given you a reason to fear me? I never raised my hand to you and rarely even raised my voice. If you were afraid, it was because you were afraid that you wouldn't have your cake and eat it too." "Thomas, I will not leave this house like a defeated woman. You can't kick me out. This is my home too." The Irish side of her was beginning to emerge, and she wasn't about to give up without a fight. "Jess," I replied, keeping my cool, "I bought this house with my own money before we got married. It is registered in my name. Luckily, we don't have children, so you can't argue that you need a house to look after the kids. Our prenuptial agreement clearly states that I keep my assets if we divorce due to your infidelity. I know that your appearance allowed you to almost always get your way, but you should have read this document more carefully before signing it if you wanted to deceive me and steal my home from me." "Thomas, I don't want to deprive you of anything. I want us to be together. Charles means nothing to me. I was already planning to break up with him this Sunday." She realized her mistake as soon as those words came out of her mouth. "This Sunday, right? While I'm at my damn hockey game. Farewell sex for Chuck. Even if I believe you, which of course I don't, it's too little, too late. I swear, Thomas, I don't care about him. It was a stupid hobby on my part. I have no excuses, but you can't leave our marriage over this. We are meant to be together. Yeah, Jess, that was stupid. It was also selfish and cruel. But let's be clear, I'm not leaving our marriage. You threw it in the trash as you spread your legs for Chuck." The full weight of her infidelity began to sink in, and she began to sob. I sat with my arms crossed, waiting for her to pack up and leave. Finally, she spoke. "Where should I go? What should I do, Thomas?" "It's up to you, Jess, but here's what you should know. My family is aware of what happened. They have been by my side for the past couple of months as I learned of your betrayal. I didn't tell your parents. You'll have to do it yourself. However, if you lie to them or distort the truth, I will not feel any guilt about sending them a copy of this file. I'm not going to physically attack Chuck. However, you should know that by Monday morning your director will be aware of what has happened. I am not going to sue the school because the administration did not know about your connection. But I'm not going to hide who had sex with whom and how often. Chuck can handle this himself. If his wife contacts me, I will tell her the truth. I'm guessing you know he has 3 children. Their lives will explode, and it will be on your conscience too. So, like I said earlier, I don't care about you anymore. Where you go is your business. Sleep with Chuck or whoever, I'm done. The locks on the doors have already been changed. I didn't touch your money or accounts. You have enough money to live. You will see that the divorce I propose is more than fair given the circumstances. You can sign the papers now or wait, but I advise you to find your own lawyer. Now, if possible, collect everything you need and be kind enough to leave my house. Jess finally gave in. She wiped away her tears, went upstairs, and gathered a few more things. When she left, she walked through the kitchen. I sat quietly, emotionally drained from the confrontation, but relieved that it was over. Sorry, Thomas. Yes, Jess, you're right. Here I am, 8 months later, divorced and heading to Santa Fe. Why am I leaving, you ask? Good question. The answer is simple. I need some time away from it all. I love my family deeply and know they love me, but like my trip to Oregon 15 years ago, going out on my own again will be difficult, but it will give me a breath of fresh air. I'll spend a year or two growing the business and then hire someone to run the New Mexico office. I'll probably move back to Denver, closer to my family and friends. Apparently, my hockey team won't win many damn games without me. But at the moment, I need a little space, a little time to immerse myself in something new. A little adventure is exactly what I need. The only woman I plan to spend time with is Greta. Jess? Well, I'm not sure what she does. I heard through the grapevine that several of the hockey players' wives and girlfriends took her away for a girls' weekend when they found out what happened. I don't know what exactly happened, but rumor has it that Jess had a not-so-pleasant sex-filled weekend. Looks like she didn't expect it, but apparently hockey women are just as loyal as hockey men. Chuck, it seems that Dr. Fielding, the school's principal, must also come from a hockey family because she made Chuck's work life as miserable as possible. His contract was not renewed, and he left the state. His wife is very upset with him about the divorce, and as far as I know, his children do not want to talk to him. Interestingly, she has become friends with Tricia and now goes to some of the hockey games. Before Chuck left town, he fell down the stairs while leaving his gloomy apartment in downtown Denver. All my hockey buddies were in O'Connell's pub when it happened. At least that's what 20 witnesses said. Well, heck, maybe Bob Sedger wasn't right. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.